let's get started. Today we'll be using the recently released Entuity version 16.5 to demonstrate some of the new RESTful API features. Entuity introduced the REST API back in Entuity 15.5, and we actually did our first tech talk covering some of the functionality back in November of 2015, so just a year ago. The REST API is an excellent way to improve the workflow and automation with your monitoring system. REST operations can be initiated by making a web connection to your consolidation server for better consistency in a multi-server configuration. Now we've got a lot of content to dig into today, so with that, let me turn it over to Larry to illustrate some of the enhancements that are now available.
Thank you, Pete. Before I share out my screen, just a little background. So we are covering Entuity 16.5 today. So for those of you on the call who may have used previous versions of Entuity software, we used to have a command line API called the iClient RPC. That client was removed from the product as of 16.5 along with the component viewer. So we've taken the functionality that was in the iClient RPC and we've migrated that to the RESTful API. I am going to demonstrate some of the functionality of the REST API client today. We'll demonstrate how to use the GET call to actually pull information from devices and ports, how to use the REST API to change standard device attributes, and also how to unmanage an interface, and finally how to add a device. And then at the end of today's session, Pete will actually show, we have some Groovy scripting examples or samples that are included with the standard product, and Pete will demonstrate how to use one example of how to use that scripting. I'm strictly going to be showing you from the command line how to execute these. There are two sources of documentation that you should know about, and I'll share my screen. The first piece of documentation that you should be aware of is our core reference guide, also called the Administrator's Reference Manual. This guide in all of our software is included under the Help Contents link from the web UI. This document contains a list of all the RESTful API commands along with some examples on how to execute those commands. So this is a very valuable reference. I will be, all of the examples that I'm showing today have been taken from this particular section. It's Appendix D of that manual. The other thing that you need to be familiar with, and I'll cover a few of these aspects, is the Stormworks Data Dictionary or the Entuity Data Dictionary, and that is a list of all of the Stormworks attributes, streams, and associations that are part of Entuity's database, and that is available in HTML format from the server. But without further ado, what I'm going to do today is I've installed a Google extension. It's basically an advanced REST client so that I can execute the API calls from an interface that is basically has a graphical user interface versus having to do command line calls. So I'll bring that up. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a list of saved commands, and the first thing we're going to do is I want to get a list of port objects from a specific device. So I'm going to open up this call. At the top is actually the HTTP request. In this case, after the HTTP, you would put in the name of your Entuity server, and then it would be referencing the API, objects. The next field after the slash is the Stormworks ID of the device, and basically what I'm going to be calling here is I'm basically going to use the API to bring up a list of all ports on that device. There's some modifiers for this command, and I'm including all my virtual ports, so I can set that to yes or no. And I also can include my unmanaged ports, yes or no, and then I can set the media type. All the calls I'm going to be doing today use the media type of JSON. We also support calls using XML. The request that I'm going to do is a basic GET request. So I'll show you where you find the Stormworks ID. My demo system is actually acting up, so this is actually a good segue to switch to a different Entuity system that I know is working. We'll look at this router device. I'll bring that up in the Summary tab of the Explorer. In order to find the Stormworks ID of this device, I'll click the Advanced tab. And if I scroll down, you'll see the Stormworks ID of this device is 866. So I'll go back to my RESTful API. I'm going to have to put the name of that Entuity server. It's no longer localhost. I call the API, and the Stormworks ID that I'm going to be pulling information from is Stormworks ID 866. When I send the request, it's going to come back, and it's going to tell me that it needs authentication. So you do have to provide authentication. In this case, I'm going to provide the proper password for this particular server, and I'll accept, and it's going to go resend that request. And I got the response I'm expecting from the server, which is an OK. And if I scroll down, all of the information that was returned from the response is here. It's all formatted. With this particular client, if I wanted to take all of this information that you see here and save it to a file, there's basically a download button that will save this content. But it's going to list out each one of the ports. It'll list out connected IPs, connected host MACs, display name. All of this information is pretty much shown in the port attribute advanced screen for each individual port. But we've asked this information to come from the device itself. So it's going to provide us a list of all the ports. I can also go to the port level and pull attributes directly from a port. So we'll use a different call this time. Again, it's a GET. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Entuity server. I'm going to use the API. In this case, this number indicates is the Stormworks ID of the port that I want to pull information from, and I'm going to pull the port MAC address. This is actually the Stormworks attribute name. So we'll pull that from a port on the device. So we'll pull it off of this particular DMZ LAN port. So again, I'm going to the Advanced tab. I need to look up the Stormworks ID. In this case, it's 2520. I'll send that information. And again, it comes back with a status of 200 OK. There are standard HTTP responses that will come from the server. So if the request isn't correct, it'll throw an appropriate error message along with text that indicate the error. Again, this is a GET request. I've asked basically for the port MAC information. And we can do this for any attribute for a port or a device. So the name is the Stormworks name. The display name is port MAC. The next two fields indicate whether that is a user editable field and whether it is a user overridden field. And then it provides me the value, which is the MAC address associated with that port. But suppose we wanted to pull some different information. Suppose I wanted to get a list of ports and I wanted to know what their spare status was. Well, that's an attribute here, but I don't know what the name of that is, so I need to look it up. So what we'll do is we will go to the help menu, and we'll dump the contents of the help file. And then if you scroll down under additional documentation, we want to look at the Entuity data dictionary, and we just want to go to the index. Now I know that the name is spare status, so I look under the letter S. And I scroll down till I get to the P's and find the proper attribute. And it's right here. So spare status. And if you look, the name, the actual Stormworks name doesn't match the display name. It's a little bit different. But this is the attribute that I want to pull from the device. So I'm going to take this and copy it and paste it into the request. So in this case, the attribute that I'm looking for is not the port MAC, but the port spare status. And again, I'll just send this out to the server. I've already authenticated, so it's not going to ask me to re-authenticate. And this comes back, and again, the display name is spare status. It's not a user editable field, and the value is going to be either 0 or 1. 0 indicates that the port is not spare. 1 indicates that it is. So the next thing I'm going to demonstrate is how to set an attribute. So again, we're going to go to a device within the web UI, and I'll select my California router here. Anything you see in the attribute field in 16.5 that has got an underline is a hyperlink, but it also indicates that it's a user editable field. So anything that's a standard attribute that has an underline in it indicates that it's a user definable attribute. So from the web UI, I can simply click the attribute, uncheck the box, and set that attribute. You can do the same thing with the RESTful API to any attribute that you see here that's user modifiable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the configuration transfer server address from this address. So again, what I need to do is I need the Stormworks ID of the device. I'll bring up the API call, which is basically going to set the transfer server. So I have to set my Entuity server. I have to set the Stormworks ID of the device, which is 866, and then the attribute that I'm going to change, the Stormworks ID for this is transfer server. In this case, it's a put request because I'm going to change the information, and this value that you see within the this information that you see within the curly braces, I got this information directly from the reference manual. But basically, what we're going to do, if it's you can do this for any user overridable attribute. I have to provide the name, which is the Stormworks name, the display name, and again, all of this information is available if you look at it through the Stormworks data dictionary. I set the user overridden field to true, and then I set the value, and I'll just change this to this value here, and I'll go and send the request. And again, I get back a status of OK. If I look at the response, basically it's just going to tell me, it's going to echo back what I set for the parameters. So I've basically set the address of the transfer server to 192.168.2.1. If I go back to the web UI and look at that attribute, okay, so this is still showing the old attribute. And that's the only reason of that is I got to refresh the web page, so it hasn't been refreshed. And you can see here that the value has now been changed. The next thing we'll demo is basically how to unmanage an interface. And again, this is a RESTful API command. We'll take a look at the command first to unmanage a port. And again, what I'm going to do is provide the Entuity server name. And then what I'm going to do is the call is for port management. And then you'll see that there are two numerical values separated by a slash. So in this case, the first numerical field is the device ID. So this is different than the Stormworks ID. So if I bring up a list of ports here, actually let me work on I'll work on CAO2. So the first thing I need is the device ID. So that is the device ID is here. It's 19, and you can see that that is different than the Stormworks ID, which is here. So I'll put that into the first field. Then I'll come back, and this is the port that I'm going to set to be unmanaged, and I need the Entuity port index, which is 2. So device 19, port index 2. It's a put request, but there's no additional parameters that are required. All I need to do is basically tell it which port I want to unmanage, and I'll send that request. Accept it. And then basically the message I get back was that that port was successfully marked as unmanaged. If we go back to the web UI and refresh it, that port may still be displayed because it does take some time before it actually becomes unmanaged. Once that port is unmanaged, it will no longer show in the left pane of the Explorer tab. The only way you can display that port once it does become unmanaged is to go to your Preferences tab in Administration here under Explorer and make sure the box to show unmanaged ports is checked, and then you can pull that up through the Ports tab under the device. Again, it's going to take a few minutes. If we come back a little bit later, it'll show as unmanaged. And the last thing we're going to do is basically add a device. I am going to go back to my somewhat functioning demonstration system here. The load balance, what I'm going to do is add a load balancer. So there are already 2 load balancers that have been added to this view. And I've created the view. It just filters on the type load balancer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the RESTful API, and we're going to use the add device. So basically, the call is just it uses the inventory, and we're going to use the post command, and then within the curly braces, I have to provide information on that device that I want to add to the Entuity database. So I need to provide the polled name. So I'm going to select a device that I've not added. I need to provide the management level. In this case, I'm going to use full, the protocol, the SNMP type. In this case, just for ease of use, we're doing V1/2C. If you wanted to add a device using SNMP V3, you would have to provide the appropriate credentials and then public. I'm going to send this post request to the server, and the message I expect back is a single message saying that the device has been queued for addition. If I go back to the web UI and refresh this, just find it here. It has showed up in inventory, and the reachable is showing a wrench icon because it does take 3 consecutive ICMP pings before the device, the reachable field will turn green. And with that, Pete, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can, the Groovy script that you wanted to show.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Larry. And actually, this came in as a question in our earlier session, and the question was, can I use regular expressions to unmanaged ports? This is a common feature that's been available in the iClient RPC tool. And let me share out my screen quick here. All right. So that should be working. So the quick answer to that question is you can't use regex directly as a REST API parameter. So REST APIs are, the REST API itself is not really suited towards filtering of that sort. It's really just an intermediary bulk, post, get, delete capability. So, it allows you to get access to data very, very efficiently. But one of the things that you can do using the REST API is build different wrappers. So you can call data and use a series of wrappers or scripts around that call to manipulate the data, modify it, filter it, however you need to. So in my environment, this is just my lab environment, I've got a number of devices. What you'll notice is I've got devices that have got an SR extension. These are layer 3 devices, and I've got a few of them in my lab. If I look at the capability of using a simple command that says use the REST API to say show me every device that I've got and show me just the devices that have an SR in them. In 16.5, if I look at my 16.5 installation, if I go to the lib tools directory, now lib tools is where you would access things like snp dump, snp walk commands. You're going to see a new directory called REST API, and that includes a number of scripts that we've just added in. And we can provide some additional details and some extensions as we go and some documentation as well. But these are Groovy scripts, and I'll just show you an example of what they look like. This is the list filter devices. Let's take a look at the list devices script. So this is just using Groovy. Now Groovy is included as a standard installation. We use Groovy throughout the product for many different functions. And it's available throughout the product, and it's available with it at the server level as well. So I can take a Groovy script, or I can create another script using a different technology, but I can use Groovy to actually go into my Entuity server and give me a one-line list of all the devices and all the information per device. So I'll actually show you an example of this because I'm going to run this from my Windows environment. Again, I'm in the libtools REST API directory, and I can see all the options that I've got here. And I'm just going to run the list devices script. So this is going to go into my server. It's going to pull out a one-line list of every device that I have under management. Now let's take this a step further, because what I want to be able to do is to do some of that regex style filtering. So we've actually got another script. This is called filter devices. This is not part of the standard install, but I expect that we'll be adding it and others, and we can certainly make this script available to you. But the filter devices script, if I go find it, here we go, gives me the ability to add a filter parameter with a regex style expression. So I'm just going to say, show me every device that's got an SR in it, and run it at that level. So again, it's the same call. It's using the eGroovy utility that we've got in the Entuity bin directory. It's available whether this is Linux or whether this is Windows. You can run it in both environments. So let's just run this to be able to filter a list of devices that have got SRs. So again, this is just an example of how you can use a script type wrapper around the REST calls to be able to do some additional filtering. I think that covers it. Pat, let's take a look and see if we've got any other questions.
Yeah, Pete, we have one more, and the question is, can I delete a device using RESTful API?
Yes, you can. It's the inventory command, and let me just can here to share out my desktop. So basically, if we go to the inventory command, I'll just scroll down here. Again, I'm going through the documentation because that's where everything is documented. But yes, so there is basically the method is the inventory command / the ID of the device that you want, and then the method is delete.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Larry.
Do we have anything else?
Nope.
So that's it for questions. However, feel free to use our email, tech.talks@entuity.com, if you come up with any other questions or have a suggestion for a future Tech Talk topic. So to wrap it up, we'll send you a video link for today's presentation for your own use. If you have any questions about the content for today, please be sure to contact your Entuity systems engineer. And let's jump to the next slide. So one last reminder before we close today's session. Believe it or not, the last Tech Talk of 2016 will be held on December 14th, and we'll be highlighting the new multi-tenancy features available in Entuity 16.5. Session details will be forthcoming, and that's it for today. Thanks for attending, and have a great week.